this thing. Okay, more people are coming in. And here we go. All right, Sarah, can you see that okay?
I can.
Cool beans. All right. Okay, I'm gonna have to move things around. It's just kind of annoying, like the Zoom, you know, blocks everything.
Relatable.
Right. Yeah. All right. Hi again, everybody, to the people who just joined. My name is Romulus, and we'll be doing a brief introduction here on who we are. But welcome to this workshop hosted by the Next Gen Psych Scholars Program. And I'll say a little bit about what that program is. I know there are a good number of people who might not be aware of this program because this event was also shared on Twitter. And so the idea with this workshop is to just do, you know, a friendly introduction to how to create a research poster. And so this is, you know, really meant for people who either have not done a research poster before, or maybe you weren't the lead author on a poster. And so we'll go over, you know, we'll sort of start from the beginning here, and talk about, you know, what is the purpose of the poster or what it's intended to be, and then, you know, discussion on what you should include and maybe tips and suggestions about design. And then also finally, you know, talking about the actual presentation and how to navigate the poster session during a conference. And so, you know, throughout the session, feel free to use the chat or unmute yourselves if you have any comments or questions about anything. Sarah here will be monitoring some of that throughout. And yeah, so we'll get started here. Oops, I'm gonna move the screen. All right, so like I mentioned, my name is Romulus. I am a third-year PhD student at the Institute of Child Development at the University of Minnesota. And so I have, you know, I wouldn't say like I'm an expert at all in posters, but, you know, I have my fair share of doing posters because I think it's a lot of fun and you can learn a lot from it. And so, and that's sort of why, you know, we decided to host this workshop. But a lot of my research focuses on just broadly in parenting and how that's related to emerging cognitive skills in preschool age children. And so I'm going to let Sarah here, who is my co-host, introduce herself, and then I'll talk just really briefly about the Next Gen Psych Scholars Program since we're recruiting in the spring. So I'm going to make a quick plug for that before we start. So Sarah?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Sarah. I am also, Romulus and I are lead mentors at NPSP. I am also at University of Minnesota Institute. No problem. Institute of Child Development. I'm a second year. I mostly study mathematical cognition and children's learning from other people. Yeah, I would say I'm not an expert in posters either. It's been a while since I've done one, but I did a whole lot before stuff changed. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you guys today. Also, if my formatting looks a little strange, I'm on my phone because I'm having technical difficulties, but still excited, still here. So
yep,
that's
we
good.
can hear you. I can see you okay, so it works out.
That's great. That's good.
All right. And then just a quick plug again. So for those who don't know, the Next Gen Psych Scholars Program is a program based from the University of Minnesota and created here. It's a student-led mentorship program specifically for underrepresented undergrads and postbacks interested in pursuing graduate studies in psychology. And so I think it started like 2 years ago now, and we host, you know, a lot of these workshops similar to this one today, but also, you know, as a mentee, you would get, you know, one-on-one mentorship from a graduate student that you get matched with, and so you might get help, for things like during the application process. I know that people are the last cycle is just about to end at this time, and so if you're interested, just do a quick Google search. I didn't include a link here, but just do a quick Google search of Next Gen Psych Scholars Program. And then we'll, keep a lookout on Twitter too, because the new recruitment or the new cohort is being recruited, I think, in April or March. And so, and if you want to just learn more about it, there's some information on the website. And so just wanted to say a quick plug about that, but we shall get started for our topic today. And so just to, kind of start from the beginning here and talk a little bit about, why we might even do a research poster, what its purpose is. We might get some background on what the purpose is here. And so thinking about a research poster, we typically think about it as a way to disseminate our research, normally during a conference, but there might be other situations where you might do a poster, but it's typically during a research conference, right? And so if you think about it, if we, read our papers, right, papers in our field usually take years to publish, months and years. And so posters are a great way to disseminate your research very quickly. And so a lot of the times, if you go to a poster session at a conference, a lot of that research is, cutting edge, right? That this is a new method, for example, that they're presenting. These are new findings. And so I think it's a great way to kind of get around the whole publication system in terms of trying to disseminate your research findings a lot faster. And then, in general, it's also an opportunity to generate discussion with the larger research community. I mean, there are, in conferences, there are a ton of people with different levels of expertise, and so it's a great opportunity to do that, to have that discussion. And then relatedly, I think this is often actually overlooked, but getting or gathering feedback on your research could be a primary motivation for why you might do a research poster, or why you might submit an abstract to a conference, right? So it's not just about just presenting your research, but also thinking about, what you might improve on. As many of you probably know, research is a very, very iterative process, meaning that, we can always improve on something. And so there are new questions, future directions that you or your team or your research team might not even think about. And so having that extra perspective from people outside of your group will be really helpful, just in terms of building your program of research. And similarly, all research have limitations, and so just thinking about other things that you might consider, it's helpful to get at a poster session. And then obviously it's an important CV builder, increasingly, as people might be aware of, getting into graduate school, especially PhD programs, have been increasingly competitive over the last couple of years, maybe due to COVID and maybe due to other factors. But, for me personally, I thought, doing posters really helped me get into graduate school, right? And so it's something that you should definitely put on your CV. And there's, there's specific ways that you can sort of highlight that appropriately in your CV. And so admission committees definitely think about, or consider posters, and rather heavily, in terms of understanding that you're taking initiative, that you're doing research and understand the process. And so this serves as a product for that. And then, I'll talk a little bit more about this, but networking is a very important part of why you might even do a research poster at a conference. Again, getting feedback on your research poster, but also just chatting with people about, even if it's not about your research, right? Just meeting people in the field. It's good. And last, it's fun, right? At least to me, designing a poster and then putting it together is fun. Poster sessions itself are also fun. You have the opportunity to present and talk about the research you are most excited about. And so, yeah, those are just some of the reasons why you might think about submitting your research as a poster. And so, walking through just how to begin here. Sorry. And so, obviously, you need to have a research project to be able to present something, right? And there are many different types of research posters actually out there. And so most posters that I've seen, and certainly the ones that I've done, are either primary or secondary data analysis. And so a primary data analysis might be like something, data that you collect yourself, or that your research team has collected. And then a secondary data analysis might be, something that that an existing data set that you've analyzed. And so I've done both of these things. And so a large majority of the posters that you'll see are probably going to fall into one of these two categories. However, I want to mention too that it's not constrained to these two. There are a lot of different types of submissions, of poster submissions that you could do. It's just going to depend on the conference and what they might accept, right? And so I've seen conferences have a call for posters that might be a proposal for a new project, right? Like you didn't actually start the project yet, but you have an idea of what measures you're going to collect, what data, right? And so it would, it's kind of a proposal, kind of highlighting what you plan to do. Also, there are posters that focus on the method or methodology. So, for example, if you're maybe piloting a new method that assesses some some topic, right? You might present it as a poster to get feedback on. And so again, that's where the feedback comes in, right? Because you're trying to kind of figure out what things to improve on and how to change your particular method that you're thinking about. And so that's helpful too. And then finally, another thing that another type of poster that I've seen is kind of a literature review or a meta-analysis. So this is kind of like a summary of the literature, or you could do a quantitative analysis, so a meta-analysis of the existing literature on your particular topic. And so again, there are lots of others, but you'll have to check with the conference that you're interested in to see what they're willing to accept, or what the call for the abstract is for. And then just in terms of the process, most often post or conferences will ask for an abstract, that you submit an abstract for your particular research project. And this is generally pretty short, but I think it really also depends on the conference in terms of the word count and things like that. But most of you are probably familiar with abstracts and what it entails, and so you'll be asked to submit something like that. And then I think, it's also really important to think about the timing of submission. It's good to keep timing in mind because the calls for poster submissions and other types of submissions, so if you're doing like a talk or something, usually are like months ahead of the date of the conference. And so, if you are thinking about doing a poster, right, or you want to do a poster and you're thinking about a particular data set that you haven't analyzed yet, this is going to involve some planning, right? Because also the submissions, they require you to have an abstract, but it's not necessarily the case that your poster needs to be created by the time you submit, right? Usually they give you like, up to the date of the conference to have your poster created. And so you have that time, but you do need to, have a pretty good idea of what your project, what project you're submitting. And so, and then usually it's kind of annoying, but submissions are usually closed like a couple months before the conference. And so, again, that involves planning ahead of time. And so we've actually compiled a list of conferences. So Sarah has done that, so that's great. Thank you, Sarah, for putting that together. And so we will put we will share a drive with everybody who was registered for this. And it's just a list of, it's not a very comprehensive list, but it's a good list of conferences in psychology happening either this year, so 2022, and then there are a couple there in 2023, because some conferences are every 2 years. And so it's a pretty good list with a variety. Some conferences are more general, like APA, right? American Psychological Association, or maybe APS. And so, we'll share that after the meeting. And then, yeah, so after you've sort of submitted your abstract and then you sort of move into this next phase of creating your actual poster. And so that's what we'll talk about next. And so I'm just gonna go through this rather quickly because software that you'll use is fairly straightforward. Typically, you'll use PowerPoint or Google Slides to actually create your, what you'll do is you actually create a single slide that you put all your information on. And we'll have examples for folks who have not necessarily seen this. I don't know people's experiences with how to actually create the slide. And so this link here is a guide that you could look at that I found. This is from the University of Alabama and has some really nice instructions on like how to actually like set up the slide and how to change the dimensions, right? And stuff like that. I'm not gonna go through that. And they talk about some stuff about design too. And so that might be helpful. But Sarah will talk a little bit about design in a couple minutes here. And so I think most people, at least from my experience, just use PowerPoint or Google Slides to build their poster. But I've heard also some people have used like the Adobe Creative Suite. So Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign could be really nice. It's obviously a bit more complex, but it does offer you flexibility and more options. Might be particularly nice if you are, you're into design and you have a lot of like complex models and figures that you want to create. But I guess a big downside is that this is usually, it's not free, right? Like if you're at a university, maybe if you're a student, sometimes universities allow you to download it for free during your tenure at that school. But oftentimes it's like not free. And so there are a lot of open source alternatives out there that are free. So anybody can use these and download them. So there's Open Office. So that's just kind of like the free version of Microsoft Office. So they have their own version of Word, PowerPoint, Excel. And then I also thought Inkscape is pretty nice for creating figures. So if you have like graphs and stuff, or if you have, if you want to show like a model or something, Inkscape is pretty good. GIMP is kind of like a Photoshop, but it's open source. And so it's good for like editing images. So a lot of the times, you know, if you have a photo that you want to show, like if you're using a particular method or a specific measure or something, and you just have a photo to just better show what you're working on, or to how you collected data. I mean, you know, you might want to use GIMP to edit those photos. And then lastly, Glyphy and Lovely Charts are just other programs that you could use for diagrams. Like, you know, if you have a model to show like mediation or moderation or some other statistical model that you want to highlight, these are options to create some of those. And then I'll turn it over to Sarah, just talk about what the actual poster might include and stuff about design.
Nice. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about any of that other stuff, like the prep stuff before you make the poster? Anything else we've talked about? I am back on my computer, so we're winning today. We're on a win streak.
Love to hear it.
Great. Okay, so I'll just talk about the main elements, and then I'll show like a handful of examples that we got from other NPSP mentors, so you can sort of see the broad range of what posters look like. There's no one correct way to do a poster. There's lots of different schools of thoughts on like what to include, what not to include, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But essentially, the main elements that you generally see are a title, so the title of the project. I'll just run through them all. You put your names and your affiliations of who else is authoring the poster, that sort of core content that you would see in a paper that you might write. So that background, methods, results, discussion. And then you have these visuals that I think are really important, and a lot of people do too, because it's a very visual medium. So you have these figures and these tables that showcase your data if someone is not going to read all the text that you put about the data. So just real quickly, the title is really important. Just like if you're writing a paper, that title is gonna, entice people to come look at your poster, come talk to you. Sometimes people will put like the main finding right up front, right in the title, but not always. You can just sort of be more broad about the subject matter. Yeah, you can put a little pun in there. Romulus and I were talking about funny titles, if you want to be a goofy presenter. I mean, sometimes that's very interesting. It can really like break the monotony. So, whatever you think is best, you pick that title. And usually that is also submitted with the abstract. Yeah, the core content really doesn't vary that much either. It can, but that's mostly like the amount of room you give to each particular section. Some people really put like results as like the main thing. Sometimes, like Romulus was saying, the methods are really important. That's sort of a new methodology you want to talk about. Sometimes there's like no background, so people don't know what you're talking about. So all these pieces are really important, and you can have them in different amounts depending on your preference. And then, yeah, the visuals, I will just say real quickly, for the visuals, you want to make sure that like anyone looking at it can understand it. So if it's like a very confusing figure, it might look great, but if you're not getting your main research points across, then it's not a very effective figure. Yeah, that's like the core. Those are the pieces, and we can look at some examples of how those sort of come together. If no one has any questions about this part. I don't know if you can hear the cars outside my window, but okay, I think we can move on to the examples. I think we're ready.
Okay,
so we're just gonna look at, we'll just look at a couple at a time, and I can talk about sort of the similarities between them.
Yeah, and there's a good variety of
Mhm.
posters here that we got. I think Sarah, one of them is yours, right, too? So
First one
and
is
then
mine.
all, yeah, cool. And then
Yeah.
others from that we gathered from other mentors and people from Twitter too, has been
Yeah.
really
Mhm,
gracious
mhm.
enough to share their posters. And so
Yeah.
and again, we'll share the slides at the end. And so like you don't have to like take photos or anything like that. And then the session's also being recorded. But these are
Yeah.
just,
The
examples, right? And so there are many ways to do a poster, and then people have a lot of a lot of opinions about design that Sarah will go talk about too. So
yeah. Yeah. I will also say in the Google Drive folder that we shared, I think we're going to share the full posters. Some of these are
yeah,
like screenshots, the quality, they're tiny, but you can inspect them in large version later, probably. But yeah,
okay,
let's do it.
yep,
Yeah. Okay, so these two, the one on the left is mine. The one on the right is the friend Kayla's. And these ones I sort of group together as like sort of a traditional poster, if that's like, you know, whatever that means. You sort of have all the sections, you have like a background, you have the methods, results, conclusions, all in sort of their own separate little areas. You have these pictures to break up the text, different figures. Yeah, I would say these are generally pretty standard examples.
yeah. I really
Oh,
like figures like this. What I was
oh,
mentioning
thank you.
earlier.
Uh-huh.
Like if you're allowed to, I'm guessing Sarah that you got permission for these.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
um,
They
but if
signed
you're
a, yeah,
so
they
like
said,
Sarah and I work with children all the time,
mhm,
or with um, adolescents, and so a lot of the times we have tasks that we do with them, and so if you're in the same boat or if you do something similar, you know, I think it's nice to see what the task actually looks like. And so a lot of people are interested at that, when they're walking around and they see like, oh, what is that? What are they doing in that photo, right? And they come ask you,
yeah,
what is this about? Like even if they have no clue about what your research is, right? And so it's a good way to kind of start a conversation with a with the audience or with an attendee, right? So
yeah, totally agree. Yeah, I don't know if we want to look at the next
yeah,
set.
yeah, sure. Um,
The Yeah, there isn't a lot to say about the very basic format. It's pretty basic. These two I sort of grouped as there's a sort of format known as the better poster format. Don't know if that's factually accurate. It's fine, but where you have sort of like the main result and like very clearly stated. You might have like, I've seen some where it's like a very basic one sentence summary of maybe like every part, and then you sort of go into detail on the sides. Like the one on the right is a little bit more fleshed out in the middle, but you do have those like details on either side. And those, it's different. I think it's you're more likely to get like a consistent point across to every person that comes by because there's like a very clear message from your overall poster, but not everyone is pro this format just because it sort of pushes all the methodology aside. You're talking less about the other sections of the poster, but it also depends how you present it. I think there's a ton of different ways to present a poster too. So you know, I don't know
yeah,
if you've
I kind of agree with that. Where it's like I did one of these. I tried the better poster format for my last two conferences that I attended, and it's nice to have the main results highlighted, like this one on the left in the middle. But at the same time, it's especially if you have a lot of results, right? Like choosing which one to highlight, it's kind of difficult. But it does attract their attention, to the main result or to the main finding. And so, I guess the idea is so that you're not searching through like different bullet points here. Here, it's it's not like there's a ton of results, but it is nice to kind of highlight what the main findings are. And it's something that I've used in the past too, is to sort of use this space as to highlight your models, which is related to your main finding up here anyway. And so that's sort of the first things that they look at. And so yeah, anything else you want to say about that, Sarah?
I will just say one of my favorite things about the better poster format is it does sort of use the negative space in a more effective way than I think like other posters can. I was taught as an undergrad that the negative space on the poster is also very important. You don't want like blocks of text because that's very scary, very intimidating. So it seems like people I've seen do this sort of format are better able to sort of frame the thing that they want with that negative space, I guess, is what I was just thinking about. Not that that makes it better, but it does sort of shift the focus visually and in more than one way, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I know you're going to talk a little bit about flow of information, but the better poster format kind of does that nicely because there's a clear like 3-column flow of information. So you read from left to right, from top to bottom, and so it kind of highlights that. And it's sort of like the middle area is like a different color from the rest of the poster, right? At least from a lot of the better poster formats that I've seen. And then something that I've noticed here too is that a lot of the times people put QR code either like they have a website that they want people to go to, like either it's like a professional website that they have or just for like Twitter. I think it's also important to have like contact information. So this is a way that people do that, or you can just leave your email, that also works. So something to think about too.
Yeah, good point.
Should I go on to the next one?
Sure. Do we have a question? A question in the audience?
Yes.
Hi guys, thank you so much.
Hi there.
Great.
Sure.
So I have an upcoming poster, so I just submitted, and I mean, I'm not sure if I'm gonna make it yet, but it's in a different format. So it's actually like a proposal of research. So it's not like it's even before we're collecting data. So I was wondering, like with this new poster format, how would that look like? Have you guys like ran into those at all, or any suggestions?
That's a great question. You go first, Romulus.
Yeah, that is a great question. I have never ran into that myself, but I can imagine that you could probably use the same type of format, but rather obviously you don't have results yet. So something that you might highlight in the middle or the methods, or the planned methods, I guess. And so yeah, I think this can still apply. The whole point of it is just to like highlight a particular aspect of your research that you want people to notice first. Or what do you think, Sarah? I don't know if have you seen that before too?
I have not seen a lot of research proposal posters, but I was just thinking, I agree. I think that you could totally use this format in that way. Yeah, and instead of sort of highlighting the main finding, maybe you highlight like the main reason you're proposing this, or like the main reason you want to do this, or the main predicted outcome. I think there's lots of different things that you could highlight there that I think would still work.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah,
sure. Great question. All right, if there are no questions right now, let's move on to the next slide. Here, there are other examples to see.
Yeah, these were the other 2 examples I had. I would say the one on the left is sort of a better poster format. There's like a lot still going on. And the one on the right is very text heavy, which I mean, I've seen a lot of those too. So It's all up to personal preference, how much detail you want to go into what your PI wants you to do. Yeah, these ones are just a little bit different than the other ones in terms of what they chose to do.
And I think sometimes like it's really hard to avoid like text, right? Like, you know, if you don't have like a photo of the particular measure or something, or maybe, I don't know, you just did a survey. I don't know what you would show from a survey, right? Like this one might be from Bria, who is our colleague. This one might be from a survey, right? So it looks like it's a youth report survey. And so it's really hard to like break up the text with a photo or something. And so I think, you know, she does a pretty nice job of like sectioning things out here, because you can see like where everything is. And then she has a nice figure here to show her major findings. She does have a huge reference list.
I was going to say that's a lot of references for a poster, but knowing Bria, very thorough.
Yeah, right.
Great.
Right. And so, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say something and now I forgot. I mean, posters can look all different ways, I guess. Go ahead.
Right. And then just this is from Mariah. And so this poster looks really nice. She has very complex stats on here with all the modeling that she does. And so, you know, figures are really great because when you're explaining things, especially complex models, you'd want to be able to point at things on your poster. So this is kind of nice. Anything else you want to say about this, Sarah?
I remembered what I was going to say before. Okay. I was gonna say, you know, we'll talk a little bit about in-person versus virtual sessions briefly, but I was just going to say it feels tough to leave a lot of stuff off the poster because when you're not there, people will still look at it. You want people to be able to grasp the project and the research that you're doing, even if you're not there to explain it. So you do want the poster to be a standalone thing, which can be hard if your methodology or your results are very complicated, which I would say that's the main reason that was like the struggle I would have with putting like lots of text on my poster, because you want people to get it, even if you can't say it to their face.
Right.
Not to say that like you won't answer their questions when you are there, because you will, but you won't always be there. So
right. Good point. And then you know, that brings about the question about balance between like text, right? Like and that's sometimes, you know, lab preference or personal preference on how much text to include. Like some people like Mariah here, it looks like she has like a whole paragraph, right, that talks about the introduction, and other people don't have some people might not have like complete sentences necessarily as part of their introduction. And so there are, you know, pros and cons to that, right? Like maybe if you read this, right, you'd have a good sense of like what the background or this research is about. But I think this is pretty good actually in terms of like complete sentences and stuff like that. But you know, in the past, I've seen posters that just have like a phrase or something like that. That it might be hard to, you know, fill in the details if you're just looking at it without the person presenting right there. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Sarah, Alexis had a question here. What is the range for the references a poster should have? And also, do we have to have a reference list on the poster if we do in-text citations? Any thoughts on that?
I think at least when I've done posters, I'm sure it varies by, you know, preference and stuff. But when I do in-text citations on my poster, I do cite them, but I don't put like the full reference. I think I put like an abbreviated reference, at least on like the one example I had. It was like, I think I did like footnote style, like you put like the little number and then you put like
Let me go back.
Brief. Oh, sure. I don't know if you can see it from here, but like I put like
here.
little footnotes in the background, and then I sort of very, very briefly put in a little citation. But I do know it's very common to put in like the full, like you can see Kayla put in, I think, the full references too. So
yeah, it's just going to be like really, really tiny. In my posters, I've never put the full citation. because like I usually want to have space for like, I don't know, you also want to put in like acknowledgements or something if you have any of
Yeah.
those. You'll find that it's actually very, very difficult to have space. Like you'll run out of space so fast. And so I usually try to make the reference list very, very short. And so like Sarah here, I usually do something like this, right? Like you just put the name of the author and then the year, and then have the footnote. So I do exactly what Sarah did here. And then I guess with regards to like how many references a poster should have, that's kind of like up to you. Right? Like,
yeah, I was gonna say like, go ahead.
There's not a specific. I've never seen a conference say that you should have specific requirements about the number of references you should have.
No, I
right.
Yeah, I think it totally depends on how much background you give, because that's where the references are going to be. Like if you have this long sort of history of literature that like is really important and you want to put that on the poster, like that reference list will be really long. But if you really are talking about like a novel thing for an established construct, you might cite a couple things. I think it depends on the poster content.
Right.
But
great question. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 15 minutes, so we're just going to go through the rest of these. So Sarah,
we'll go real quick. I mean, a lot of this stuff we talked about already, but I'll just, typical headings, you don't need all of them. It depends on what you want to talk about. The poster size will vary. I'm not sure. Like I said, I haven't been to a conference in a while, but I feel like sometimes they tell you the size that is preferred, or sometimes your lab has like a preferred poster size.
Like
really vary a lot.
A good, I think there are like, they tell you what the dimensions are of what you should put, or sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
And so you saw in the examples that we had here,
they vary.
Yeah, this one looks like wider, right, in length, and then this one is more vertical, right? And so you should check with your conference whether they specify, and especially like I think it's less important if it's virtual, but since a lot of these conferences are going to be in person, they want you to have a specific dimension so that it fits on the board that you stick it onto. So that's something to keep in mind as so let me move back here. Okay.
And you want to make sure, I mean, this is like details you'll figure out, but you want to print it, you want to make sure the file is the right size to be printed at that size. You don't want them to get all grainy and small. The font size, that also depends on preference, and you want to make sure people can read it. You want to make sure that it is readable. Sort of related to that, you want to make sure sometimes people think it's important to make the poster accessible to people who are colorblind or have other sort of, you want to make sure the poster is accessible to everyone. You want to, you don't want the font really, really small because then people can't read it. Pictures we talked about, really important. A picture will draw people in sometimes when text will not. That balance between the poster being standalone, you want people to understand the poster when you're not there, but you don't want to overwhelm them with text. The visual narrative flow we didn't talk about too much, but generally, I mean, you saw the examples. You want the introduction on the left and then the discussion on the right, because then you read it left to right. The better poster format sort of breaks that by sometimes putting like all the sections in the middle, like a brief summary, or they'll talk about, the results, and then they might have the discussion somewhere else. But you want to make sure that people are not like jumping around your poster to get the sort of storyline of what you're trying to say. And then we did talk about the better poster format. Whether that's true, we don't know, but that's what it's called.
Okay, cool. And then I'll just quickly talk about, since we just have like 10 minutes here, talk about presenting. And so, there are many different ideas and approaches on how to effectively present a poster. And so typically, or what I do as well is have a spiel. So this is more of a 2 to 3 minute summary of your research, highlighting the question, the methods, and the results, or your major findings. And then, after you sort of do that, then you ask whether your audience has any questions, and then you sort of go into the Q&A section. And then alternatively, I've seen people just like stand by their poster and then just let the reader or just let the audience read the poster, and then just like say that, oh, let me know if you have any questions. And so some people have done that, which I'm not particularly a fan of, since I feel like there's less engagement with that method. And then, sort of the opposite of that, some people just walk their audience through the whole poster. So this is usually like a 10-minute thing, where you're kind of going through, starting from the very beginning, talking about like what the gap in the literature is, why you're doing this project, highlighting the methods, right? And then talking about your results and all this stuff. And so, sometimes some of this stuff is personal preference. But again, it might be more, you should be aware of your audience. And so, someone who's doing a similar research, or maybe doing research in the same topic, might want to know more details, right? And so that's something that you might pick up on earlier. But the important thing is to know all aspects of your poster. So if you put something on your poster, it's fair game in terms of in terms of the Q&A, right? And so, make sure that you kind of know, someone might ask a question about like a figure, right? So you want to be able to walk people through that figure, and understand and help them understand what you're trying to convey. And then, there, over the past year and a half or almost 2 years, a lot of conferences have gone virtual. And so this is quite different from an in-person conference. And so usually what happens is that they ask you to record a brief video presentation of your poster. It's really brief. It's akin to the spiel here, where you're only given like 2 to 3 minutes typically. And so you kind of just highlight the relevant points, walk them through. And then, I found that I attended 2 virtual conferences, and I found it really awkward with a poster session at a virtual conference. And so, I can't wait to attend an in-person conference again. And so, hopefully those days are behind us in terms of virtual conferences. And then obviously, as we mentioned earlier, conferences are a place to network. And so, introduce yourself, provide contact info, especially if you're chatting with someone who, is doing similar research and who, might have a lot of feedback for you on how to improve your research, or you just might want to keep in touch and things like that. So I met a good number of people through poster sessions, just because they're like, doing something similar, for example. And then just lastly here, in terms of navigating the poster sessions can be awkward. And so, we try our best to be friendly and welcoming. And so, it's a good idea, if you see that someone's glancing at your poster, or that they seem interested, it's a good idea to ask if they want to hear more, or if they have any questions. So things like that. Also, I guess I sort of mentioned this a little bit earlier, but it's really good to consider your audience. So that's going to change how you present your research. Now, if you notice that this person, if you pick up that this person isn't necessarily in your field or doing the research on your particular topic, then you might present it in a more high level way. And then, but if you notice that they seem to know about this, they're asking like very specific questions about your method or about your results, right? And they seem to be more knowledgeable about your field of the study, then it's okay to kind of dig deeper into the details, right? And so really tailoring your conversation based on your audience. And then really quickly, it's also good to have an elevator pitch. And so this is different from the spiel. The spiel is more about what your research topic is about on your poster, but the elevator pitch is really about like more general. It's more general, so it's about who you are, what your general interests are. I also, would like to say that, if you kind of let them know that, you're looking for a post-bac opportunity or you're thinking about going to grad school. So it's a way to kind of like advocate for yourself and a way to network with others. I don't know. So I know people who got like post-bac jobs from poster sessions. And so I guess you utilize it to your advantage, right? And then, we already started talking about Q&A, but then, obviously practice is very important. You should practice well ahead of time and kind of think about the questions that people are gonna, the common questions that people are gonna ask. And so, if you work in a lab or something, practice to your colleagues, with your PI. Sometimes I just like literally like practice on my own, just like saying what I'm gonna say, especially your elevator pitch or your spiel. And so all those things are kind of important to consider when you are trying to navigate the poster session. And so I think that is all that we had. I'm gonna stop sharing here. It looks like we're just right on time in terms of timing here. So does anyone have any questions? I'm gonna send out the survey to just everybody who registered. And so if you just get it through your email, just feel free to just fill it out. That would be really helpful. But I'm gonna end the recording here.